The buck stops here.
Okay.
Where you go?
Number one, coaching groups. So not senior coaches. So Craig McRae, Michael Voss, Sam Mitchell, great first up wins. That's the labels that I've heard them given. But their coaching groups need some acknowledgement as well. We put too much stock on the senior coach.
Really?
Yes, he creates the environment. There's no doubt, but it's just easy to take it to one person. But coaching groups is where it's at, and you either have a good one or a bad one. And I think that those groups deserve a bit more credit.
So pay the senior coach less and spread it around more?
That's not what I said. I just said that when we acknowledge a performance, we don't. I mean, I wouldn't. Would anyone know who the Hawthorn backline coach is? No, we don't know. And I think that in the end, we can. I think senior coaches themselves are starting to do this more and more and acknowledging the people that are doing the work behind the scenes. So
the message is to be more cognizant of the fact that it is not just Sam Mitchell and it is not just Voss and McRae.
And that's not to take any credit away from senior coaches, because they have a very important role. But what I will say from experience is that there's a disproportionate amount of credit that's given when things are good, and a disproportionate amount of criticism that is labelled at that person when things are bad.
I like it. It's something I didn't see coming from you, but I like it.
Number two, centre bench stoppage run-ons. Now, there was the 666 came in at the beginning of 2019. So a lot of teams were putting a seventh player off the back, and we just wanted to open the game up, try and get more even-numbered contests in front of the ball. It actually hasn't changed the percentage or the scores from centre bounces. It's just around 10%, and it stayed at 10%. But what we do see is in run-ons, when sides get momentum, often it'll be off the back of a couple of centre bounce scores. And we saw Melbourne kick 5 goals from centre bounce. We saw Carlton go in the
Bulldogs kick 3 at one stage.
Yeah, and we saw Carlton win the game off it in the last quarter.
Giants had their way with Sydney for a while.
And there was actually, it was up to around 15%. So statistically,
Why?
we saw, I think that there was just some dominance of teams that were prepared to, they won the contested ball battle. 4v4, that's the purest, lowest or even number contest with a low number that you get in a game of footy. You'd very rarely get a 4v4 like that in general play. So centre bounce work is important. You're seeing sides not getting drawn into the inside as much, and if you win a 1v2 on the inside, that gives you a 2v1 on the outside, and that's where you get your Dangerfields that are streaming out and getting really deep penetration off centre bounce. So
the buck stops. Number 3 is a question that I get to ask you. How do a side like Essendon, who have expectation, who showed so much last year, who had a level of excitement about them, have 6 months to prepare for a game at the MCG against a very good opponent, so there's no, reason to be thinking ahead of the game itself. Serve up that, which was benign. A benign performance in round 1 when you've had the whole summer to get yourself ready for it.
Yes, and how frustrating is it to watch that when your anticipation and hopes are for the opposite? One thing we spoke about last week, because it does happen, and it happens every year. Why my closest understanding of that would be that sometimes players, teams, clubs actually play the game before they get out there. So it's not actually there's no danger of being under-prepared for round 1 or under-motivated for round 1. The biggest danger is being over-motivated and over-anxious about
They weren't.
No, but that's how it. Just because it presents as listless doesn't mean that it hasn't been an over-the-top situation. Over the top is not necessarily redlining and running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Over the top might be simply not have already played the game before you get out there, and physically you're not able to reach the level of or capacity that you would if you were in a really zen, calm, controlled state of motivation.
I get it. I get what you're saying. They look to be in a zen, calm state. So much so they didn't do anything.
Yeah, I understand that. But no, this is. I think generally this comes from being over the top in your emotional or a lack of emotional control. or it might simply be that the opposition
We're red hot.
and that's clearly how it looked like with Geelong and Essendon. I thought St Kilda were a bit slow. Richmond started well, but then dropped right away, and I thought the Bulldogs at times didn't look like the team that they normally were. They may have played the game before they got there.
Right up.
Number 4, and it's a little bit off the centre bounce, but it's coaches equalising. We saw a lot of even number contests in front of the ball, so coaches were prepared to leave an even number of forwards forward of the ball to prevent the opposition from having an extra defender.
So just have one-on-one in their forward line rather than have a half forward go into the midfield and try and outnumber at a stoppage.
And that happened at stoppages more so, and don't get used to it is what I'm saying. We saw we saw a lot of connection. So when the ball moved forward either from stoppage or from turnover, we actually saw a lot of really good connection through the midfield, through attacking mid and then into forward 50. Now, whether it was a contest and then goals, but we actually had high percentage of entries that turned into scores, higher than normal. So it's around 50%, where, over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, it's the average is around sort of 44, 45. So we sort of saw a statistical difference in that.
Yep.
Don't expect it to be the same. Like, a lot of coaches want to try and take this rebound away from the opposition, but you've got to give to get, because that means you don't have protection out the back.
Okay.
It only takes one coach in a contest to blink to shore up his defence, and then the other coach has to work out what to do with his extra.
That'll come in time, you think?
But how good was the footy when we see that?
Well, the Giants and the Swans.
And I don't know how to mandate that, because it only takes one of the two combatants to say, no, we're going to shore up our defence. But it was good to see, and we've got to find out how we can get that in more.
Yep.
The last one I want to say is, and this is a bit of a heads up for everyone out there, and this is on this judgment piece. And a little bit about Bevo. So Bevo had a bad moment on Wednesday. What I loved about it is he came out and he owned it. He owned it and he apologised. He put his hand up. And as far as I'm concerned, I know I've spoken to you about this, that's done and dusted, because humans are not perfect.
Yep.
But when you do fall short, and when you don't represent your people as well as you would like to, you put your hand up and you own it straight away. That's leadership and that's strength. If your worst deed, like everyone of the listeners out there, if the worst deed that you've ever done in your life was on the front page of the paper, how would you feel after that? And that doesn't necessarily define your character as a person, but it definitely would impact your reputation. And do we just judge people on those isolated incidents, or do we give them more chances or an understanding to pump the brakes a little bit, and that might not be that person, but it's only the little snippet that we've seen.
So redemption stories through the weekend's footy, and there was the best example probably Stengel, was it?
Stengel, Geordie to go, he cops it plenty. Even someone like a young fella like Jack Ginnivan. So now we think, okay, so he's getting ahead of himself, and it all sort of becomes part of our psyche, because we pick all of these things up. But I just want pump the brakes. Think, okay, if your worst deed was on the front page, how would you feel? Would it be representative of who you are? All of us would hate that. We would be mortified by that. And we're not perfect. We are human. So a little less judgment, a little bit more understanding. That doesn't mean you don't challenge things that aren't right. They need to be challenged. But if you were in the same position, you'd want some understanding.
So just to set the scene, Jack had a GoPro or one of those things after the game.
Yeah, and that's like the media department handed over.
Do they? Right.
So, that's how it would happen.
Right, and so he was around just filming everyone.
We need content for people that aren't at the ground.
Selfie style stuff, and then in the song. What say you?
Well, he was up and about, and he's a bit of a lad, Jack. And what I would say is that Kane's got a segment that he needs to fill, so that's probably contracted. So he's got to find something that he's not happy with.
I'm sorry, I step in there. That is his.
The volcano needs to happen, apparently.
It's his strong opinion on that.
And he's got a few.
Yeah. And
what I would say about you guys in the media.
He didn't just do it for media's sake.
But you guys in the media.
Us guys.
if you want personality from players and coaches, you want give us a little bit of colour. Like, don't give us the tried and true. And then when someone pops their head up, you want to cut it off.
Did you have no problem whatsoever with it?
A little bit of a problem. No, I love the personality. I love it, and I think you've just got to embrace that and go with it.
Right.
And from what I can gather, Fly is big on that as well.
Right.
Especially with young guys coming in now, you've just got to let them go, and they'll get whacked on the head and have to dust themselves off and go again soon enough. And this will be a little one of those for Jack.
In terms of like the public
judged?
He's been judged by Kane.
You'll be judged. You'll be speculated, and you do get whacked into shape. But let's not want things to be so cut and dried. Let's enjoy the rough edges on the young guys, and they are brash, and they are a little bit over the top at times, and they will have ups and downs, and they won't have emotional reactions that are as regulated as the mature leaders. So let's see it for what it is.
Yeah, no, and commentators don't need to be regulated either. So if someone has a different opinion, in this case Kane, then I think it's absolutely sensational.
I agree, and he's. I'd love to have the strength. I mean, he has great strength of conviction, doesn't he? And he obviously he's quite critical. Like, I wonder what how he judges when he goes out to a 3-course meal or when he watches a movie. Like, it's either the best or the worst, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and
you lived your whole life like that.
I would. My immediate reaction is,
he's good copy.
Bit over. No, this is on the Jack stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it. Content. I did it. Just pull it back a touch.
Yeah, what it does, I think, is it puts you out there, and then you've got to follow through.
Yeah.
What I will say is behind Jack's brashness, and it's there, and where's the fault? Yeah. Is the fault of the media person handing him over for him to?
Well, fault. I think it's just maybe go and get some shots here.
Yeah, should that have gone to? Yeah, but in the end, like as you do in a media sense,
personality. In
a media sense, you want to get the best copy.
Yeah.
So all right, so give it to
Grundy.
Give it to a Peacock.